everyone. Welcome to the Birchfield Penny Arts Center Book Club at the Center. Tonight, first of all, I want to welcome everybody and thank you for joining us. Tonight, we're going to have a very interesting and lively discussion with the successful author, Brandon Stickney, many of whom you may know. He's from Lockport, New York, currently living in Florida. I approached Brandon asking him if he'd be kind enough to share a little bit about his book, Timothy McVeigh Story, which is not what it's called. It's called All-American Monster. But he suggested that we actually spend time talking about his current book called The 5 People You'll Meet in Prison. I read it. It's extraordinary. I encourage you, if you haven't downloaded it onto Audible, as I suggested that many of you do, that you pick the book up when it comes out in print and read it. I know that you'll enjoy it immensely, as much as I have. Before we begin tonight, though, I'd like to introduce you to Brenda Matthews. So Brenda, can you say hi so they can see your face?
Hi, everybody.
Brenda is a docent at the Birchfield Penny Arts Center, and she's also our facilitator tonight, and she'll be introducing Brandon in just a moment. But first, I'd like to have Michaela Warros speak to you for a minute about the mechanics of this evening's presentation. So Michaela?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm just going to go through a quick tutorial of how to use this webinar if you're not familiar with Zoom webinars. So during tonight's presentation, you'll listen to questions coming from our facilitator, Brenda, and Brendan will be reading from his book, but we want you all to participate as well, and you can do that with the Q&A function. So if you move your mouse, there will be a bar that'll pop up at the bottom of your screen. You'll see the Q&A button there. You can ask any questions you'd like to ask Brandon, and during the night I will interject with those questions to him. You can also use the chat box below to talk to each other, but I'll be mostly moderating the Q&A to ask the questions that you want me to ask. If you're viewing from Facebook, you can use the comment section and I can ask those questions here too. And if you'll notice, we are recording this. So just so you know, all the panelists here that you see on the screen that will be talking tonight will be the only ones being recorded. You yourself as participants are not being recorded. Okay.
Thank you, Michaela. And Brenda, I'm going to ask you now to introduce Brandon, if you would, and then we will move on from there. So Brenda, would you be kind enough to introduce Brandon?
Sure. Welcome, everybody, to the August Book Club. I have the pleasure of introducing who attended UB, lived in Lockport, and worked as a journalist in 1990 at a small newspaper, the United Sun Journal in Lockport, New York. For 5 years, he was a general assignment reporter, wire editor, and police reporter. He covered the Timothy McVeigh bombing in Oklahoma City, both locally and nationally. He appeared on ABC, CNN, A&E. Also, he sourced stories from Time Magazine and Associated Press. His next career move was that of public relations field. He worked at Prometheus Books and Mercedes-Benz Financial and social ads agencies. In 2016, Brandon was involved in an opiate drug sting and sentenced to 2 years in prison. He faced his addiction and mental health issues behind bars. With a guard and 4 inmates, he found help and support and change in his life.
Thank you, Brenda. So at this point in time, Emily is going to share with us, or should we introduce Brandon and have him say hello? Let's have Brandon say hello to everybody. So Brandon.
Oh, goodbye, everyone. Thank you. It's been a great night. No, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And we're going to have fun tonight. Please try to make your questions that you ask as weird as possible. And I'm not afraid to answer anything. And I'll talk about absolutely anything that happened in prison, because I think that people really need to know what goes on there. And how their money, the average American pays approximately 2 years of their salary goes to uh, supporting our criminal justice system in America, and that is a $180 trillion bill every year. And I figured you might want to know where your money is going.
Thank you. Emily, did you want to share with us the screen? And Brandon, if you can comment on these images, that would be great.
Oh, okay. Well, there's the whoops. You just saw the cover. That's the cover of my new book, and it is currently available on Amazon and Audible, the audio version of the book, and that's actually kind of a hot seller right now. It's number 84 in the Amazon 100 top books in the category of biographies of activists. So it's doing fairly well. And the next set of images is when I first became a published author in 1996. I had worked for the Lockport newspaper, the Union Sun and Journal. And while I was there, Timothy McVeigh and others unknown perpetrated the Oklahoma City bombing as revenge on the Justice Department for what happened at Waco. And it was a very hot selling book. I was overwhelmed by the interest in it. When I was first published, I just couldn't believe that I was a crime writer, or that I would be a crime writer. I always thought I would be published in fiction, and but that's not how things worked out. The story itself, you probably know, you heard about Timothy McVeigh and what he did and how he made it to Oklahoma City and what happened after, as well as his death. And that book for me was a real milestone in my life, and really changed things for me and my wife at the time. And it was quite an experience to be 29 years old and be a published writer, to actually achieve that. Many authors don't. They're 57 by the time they actually taste success in publishing. And the bottom photo is of the book signing that happened at that particular Walden Books at the time. And it was interesting being recognized around the Buffalo area and in other areas for writing this book. And it sold fairly well, and it totally changed my life, because the book opened up the doors of Mercedes-Benz Financial. They were looking for a writer and a marketing manager, and they knew of my work at Prometheus Books in marketing and in selling books. And they were doing marketing and a different kind of salesmanship at Mercedes. And I wound up leaving Prometheus Books and was hired by Mercedes-Benz full-time. And it was an American success story. You know, the child, the house, the book, the money that we made, everything was kind of a little miracle for us, because we started out, my wife and I, we were very, very poor. And once we got into Mercedes and having a house and things like that, it was official. I had become an old man. So that's the commentary on that slide. I brought this photo because I wanted to show how your life changes when you're an author. I would assume there are some unpublished authors or published authors in the audience tonight. And when your book is published, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, there's going to be interest in your life and in the book itself. And you'll do exactly what we're doing right now, which is talking about the experience of publishing that book. And that's, I was at the local Lockport radio station, 1340 WLVL, and doing an interview there on the McVeigh story and how I got involved in it. And I did probably in 2 years, I did roughly 250 interviews around the country, anywhere from San Antonio to Lockport, New York, to Niagara Falls, and all around the entire country. I did interviews talking about McVeigh, because McVeigh was not talking about himself or talking about anything. He had taken some kind of strange vow of silence, or something that a military man might do, which is not to say anything at all if he's accused of a crime. And he kept that up for many, for a year and a half, before his attorney got him to start talking to the public and talking to reporters. And but I was his actually I was his quote unquote spokesman for all that time, until Tim finally decided to start speaking out about what had happened and why someone would have done that. And he admitted his guilt, but no one else's. He admitted his own guilt, and he got the death penalty for it. But he went to his grave, never revealing who the other people were who were with him that perpetrated this bombing. I got a divorce from my wife. We were at the house on Morrow Avenue, and one day she asked me to leave. She said she did not want to be married to me anymore. And I walked out of the house and called my father and mother, and asked them, what should I do? We've never been married before. This is my time, and I don't understand why things are going so wrong. And I was a very sick person at the time. I had throughout high school, I was drinking. I was because it made me feel good. It made me feel happy. It took away the downside of going to bed at night and having to wake up in the morning and having to figure out some way to make it through the day. And I lost my job at Mercedes when I was asked to leave the house. And I wound up working a small job in mental health of all places in Buffalo. And I wound up going to a rehab facility that was in Pennsylvania. And it was a great facility. They really helped me out a lot there. And I was in a very dangerous place at this point in my life. I was a published author. I was given offers to write other books. Things were very positive on one side, and on the other side, where we're talking about drugs and alcohol, the things were very negative. There was a lot of opiates around, and I got into this underground network of drug sales and that kind of thing in Lockport, New York. And it was really horrible, because I knew that I needed the drugs to get through the day, but I also knew that my daughter and my wife lived in this town. I was living in Buffalo. They had kicked me out, so I just you know, lived in a different place, and it was very difficult, very difficult time. And it was actually the horror of being divorced and having such a beautiful daughter and someone who was incredibly creative. She used to sit and write at my apartment for hours. She knew how to type, and she was just an incredible writer, and making up stories about things that happened and things she heard and people she saw at the grocery store, and all of that. And it was very beautiful to see her grow up and become a creative writer and a marketer as well. She took the model of being in that creative area, and she ran with it. And she's doing very well today. She's marketing and doing some writing for some relatively large companies around Western New York. She's doing very well, and I applaud her all the time because of what my wife and I went through, and she had to go through it too because she was our daughter, and she did incredibly well. She's heroic in the way that she dealt with all of this, and dealt with it successfully. Came out on the other side looking great and doing very well. And there's the monster. That is my identification. When you get released from prison, they give you a special ID so you can use it if you go to a place where you need an ID for whatever reason. This is an official government New York State ID for an inmate, a former inmate, and it explains, who you are and all of that. So it shows the person I became. If you look at the previous picture, where I was a businessman and someone who cared about his appearance, and then left that behind and just became kind of a jailhouse slob. And while I was in there, a couple people toward the end there cut my hair for me, helped me look better, helped me get groomed better, and so I look good. And I asked for a very short haircut, but that's the guy who spent his time in 4 New York State prisons. And I think you can see, if you looked at the other pictures that were put up there, you can see the change. You can see what prison did to me. If you look at when you do that switch back and forth, it's like the scene in The Shining, where the girls are standing there holding each other, and then the horrible scene of the murder pops up. It's just like it's just absolutely terrible. I think some television shows and movies and things like that, they miss this. They'll show something horrible. They'll show a murder or something terrible that happens in the prison, but they don't really understand that when you're in prison in New York State, the COs, the corrections officers, the people who work in education, if there is any there, the other people, people from every department who work at Marcy Correctional Facility are there to abuse you psychologically every day. They tell you you're the lowest of the low, you're a piece of garbage, and this and that, and they make signing up for the military and going out and doing that, they make that look like summer camp, because they are so abusive to the inmates about just about anything they can think of to tear you apart. And some places say We knocked you down so we can build you back up, which is bullshit. And in the case of this prison, they do knock you down, and then they knock you down again. There is no build up. There is no bringing you back. There is no building you up or anything like that. It's just knocking you down for the purpose of having the joy to be able to do it to people. Let's go to the next slide. I don't like that guy in the Marcy picture. That is, I went down to Florida. I was given a special pass on parole since I had a spotless record from being in jail. I went to the director there at Marcy, and I said, will you please allow me to go into Florida and stay with my parents? And I've done a good job of being good here, and I'd like to go down there and maybe get a job and start my life over again. And I did. I went down there, and in 6 months of the first year that I was there, I wrote this book right here, and I found a publisher for it. And about 5 months, 6 months later, after working on this book more with the publisher to get it to be published memoir, the publisher, Bancroft Press, hired me to be a part-time public relations person for the books, all of the books that the publisher generates and puts out. So it was, I was very successful in getting out of prison, working through that abuse. I had some help through
Devin, are you still with us?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here.
All righty.
I just there was a successful period there in being in Florida, and the story changes there very suddenly because I met a beautiful woman down there, and the big change came through again because I came up to stay with her in Western New York after that time in Florida. And then I obtained another job working for a finance company and writing for them. So I've got 2 part-time jobs in copywriting for these firms and making some fairly good money, and on the other track again, on the track of success, and working very hard to work with the right people, stay with the right people, to maintain my time in the good place and not in the bad ones that brought me down.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for this little overview. I know that Brenda has a number of questions, but I'd like to start with my own question first. And that is, I was shocked when I read the book at the dangerous people you were put in prison with when you clearly have never harmed anyone, that you really feel that and you just called it a drug sting of sorts. So you sold pills in order to obtain money to buy alcohol, which doesn't seem like it's that horrific of a crime, especially in contrast to the people you were spending 2 years alongside. So I'm surprised that the prison system isn't divided in a little bit kinder way, putting nonviolent prisoners separate from those people who are obviously very dangerous.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, sure. I agree with you. I think that one of the things I read today on a website that I read fairly often, it's called Quora, and it has all kinds of questions that people ask. They could be asking about um, uh, uh, plasticware that you use in the kitchen for storing foods and things like that, or they could be asking about what is the best kind of lotion to use when you're at the beach. And so I was reading on there, and someone said a thing similar to what you just said, and it is true. The Department of Corrections, which is a stupid name, in every state just tosses people in with other people. And so you could have a young kid who stole from a house and he happened to be carrying a gun. So that's technically a violent crime because he was carrying a gun, even though the gun was not used. So you put him in with murderers and rapists and and they could get along, they could not get along. You don't know what's going. You don't know what's going to happen. Every day is spontaneous, kind of random, violent something. And one of those things that you're talking about, which is like why do they put murderers in with people who are, borderline, people with a couple of DWIs where they get a prison sentence because they keep doing it. Why would they do that? I don't know why, other than they just don't care, and they're not paid to care, or it just doesn't matter to the people in charge. And there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things just like this that don't matter to the prison system, and they get away with murder. They get away with whatever they want to because they're the ones running the show. There is no like say for a business you have a CEO and the CEO is running things, or for a school system you have a principal or the superintendent, the person who's really in charge of everything. In prison you have a warden, but the warden is so removed from the day-to-day stuff that happens in the jails or in the prisons that there is no one in charge. No one is supervising these people except, you got a sergeant there and you got a corrections officer over here, and they're just talking to each other. They don't care if there's a fight going on over there, and they're not going to break it up because they don't want to get hurt or stabbed or whatever. They'll just go over, they'll yell a little bit, but they're not going to break it up. They'll let the guys fight it out and solve it among themselves. It's shocking the way the prisoners are treated and ignored. They are completely ignored by the staff. I saw a man die, an older man who wanted to get out of prison. He was hoping he had like 1 year left. And he was down on the sidewalk coming back from a meal, and he dropped and he had a heart attack and he needed medical attention. So the CEO, the corrections officer, went to go get a defibrillator or something like that, and came back to the guy who was laying on the ground and tried to use it, and the unit was broken. So in addition to this, the CO running down to another dorm to get a unit and bring it back, you've got that time being lost. You've got the time being lost of everything happening around this guy and no one is helping him. And he died. Because how are you going to get an ambulance? Prisons are purposely built 20 miles away from any civilization, from a house, from houses, from developments, from businesses, and they don't want these people anywhere near there. Now that's not true with all prisons. There's some that are that are right in the middle of a city or whatever, but most of them are way out in the middle of nowhere. So I realized that if I had a heart attack, or if I had some kind of illness, that I wasn't going to live necessarily, because they don't really care whether I live or die. And now we have COVID-19. I wrote an article that was published in the New York Daily News, and it was about COVID-19 and prisons. And us, quote unquote, normal people, regular everyday people, wandering around and doing our daily thing, aren't shoved into small spaces with other people breathing right on us, some wearing masks, some not. Sergeants, lieutenants, other people there with the prisoners, just shut up, it's just, and the warden and the superintendent and all these other people, they don't talk about it. They're not responsible with regard to telling the community nearby, which has so many people in the prison, that more people caught the disease today, but we had a good amount who have recovered from it. They're not responsible for human life anymore, because we as prisoners are not viewed as humans. We are viewed completely as units of money. When you go into a prison, that prison receives money from the federal government to make sure that you take care of that individual, or use the individual to gain money. The longer I'm in the prison, the more money that particular prison makes from the federal government to stay open, to keep doing what it's doing, and that. And that kind of outrage, which I'll call it, bleeds into other aspects of the jail or of the prison, where there are incidents that are reported incorrectly. Maybe an inmate grabbed a hold of another inmate and hung him from the bars of the cell and killed him, which happens all the time. And the incident is written down by the prison staff as an incident. It's not a murder. It's not a killing. Obviously it is, if you look at the person's injuries and things like that. And it's put down into the full-time record as just an incident. As this person didn't die. You cannot find an accurate report for just about any prison on how many inmates died last year. They act like they don't know, and they won't tell you because they don't have to, because they are responsible to no one. And this goes on and on with all different kinds of situations. There may be a real suicide where the inmate does something to himself, and strangles himself and ties it to the bed and somehow dies. And that's just one example. There's so many things that happen in a prison where you have an infection outbreak of COVID-19, and the prison is overcrowded. Say downtown Buffalo, the prison's overcrowded. And they've got people on top of people. They've got 50 guys in a room that is could comfortably hold approximately 40 people. They are pushed in there. They are crushed in there. They are not treated like humans. They're all in handcuffs so they don't start fighting. And it's uncomfortable. It's hot. It's awful. And they just keep shoving more guys through that door. And you're like, when is this going to end? This has to end. And it changes who you are. The things that I've explained in the last 5 minutes you will see them, you will hear them, and you have not been attacked. You haven't been invited to get in a fight. You haven't been really bothered by anyone, but you are bothered by what I just explained, by living in that day-to-day disaster of human life. And people are getting it quickly, very quickly. It's a, what do they call that? Like they don't, it's not a litmus test, but it's a form of making one unit of something, some kind of watery thing, material that you change by adding more to it. So you have a giant test of COVID-19 going all around in these people in this little tiny room, and there's no way to stop it. Luckily, there was some strange, unexplained outbreaks at Marcy and some of the other prisons I was in, but I was not there for the COVID-19 experience. And I thank God for that, because there isn't anyone who really, the people who care are the people who are related to the people in this particular prison in Buffalo, who are saying, oh my God, what are we going to do? And they're writing to the administration and they're calling, but their voice isn't being heard in the Buffalo News. Their voice isn't being heard in the Niagara Gazette. And I don't know why. Maybe the people just don't know what to do. And that was something else that I found in prison, was that we have no voice. And I had someone on the outside send me a copy of All American Monster, the unauthorized biography of Timothy McVeigh, which was a book I wrote years ago. And that gave me credibility among all of the prisoners, and said to them, wow, this guy is legitimate. He's real. Whereas they didn't really believe me before. They didn't trust me. He said, yeah, who's that fat guy? You know, he says he's a writer. He probably isn't. And so it gave me some kind of credibility. And
I imagine there's a lot of lying and exaggerating in prison.
oh yeah, there was a guy who told me he was a writer too, and he helped write the Star Wars.
Yeah, I love that
series. Yeah, and
and you had the tangible proof.
Yeah, well, there was another guy who said he never took acid, even though he looked like kind of bizarre character, and the CEO said, well, you know, and they do read your records. They pretend that they don't, but they do read your records. And the CEO said, you're in here because of acid. You know, just told the guy, like, you're lying. You know, and they really exaggerate. I love, it's usually about women. You know, back home, I got me three women, and they so good to me, and they take care of me, and this and that, you know. And oh, let's see a picture. Oh no, I don't carry that around, man. What if someone tries to take my girl, you know? And it's just, yeah, right. Okay, well, yeah, I'm sure you're doing quite well there. And
Brenda, can you share some of your questions?
Sure. Hey, Brandon, what were the major factors while you were in prison that contributed to your attaining sobriety upon your release?
Well, as I write in the book, I did use, while I was in prison, I used Suboxone, which is a medication that will help you get off of heroin. It's a strange medication, and it's a weird scenario that the medication is even available to people, because you can use it in tiny, small amounts and get intoxicated from it. And this is the antidote to the heroin. So you're using something that you're getting intoxicated from, and you can also become addicted to that. So, but I did use a little bit while I was in prison because there is no, from what I explained earlier, I hope it came across that there is no happiness in prison at all. There's no way to kind of make yourself happy. You can work out, you can do that there. You can run on the track. But there's just no way to be happy while you're in there. And as somebody who was weak in my character from the years of drug use and abuse, I made the decision to use several times. And but it was 19 months, and I lived in a different kind of reality where everyone around me wasn't like the people who were around me when I was when I was in a negative, I'll call it a negative group, or a downward spiral kind of group of people before I went into prison. All the people I was hanging out with were all junkies, and they were all users, and that was their answer to everything. And then I met other people like Gandhi. That's the pen name for the book. I met people like Gandhi and Buddha and a couple of others who were very, very positive and helped me go through my period of using while I was in prison, and then tapering off to nothing and getting out of prison with nothing in my body. Now, I didn't. They gave people drug tests in prison. They make you pee in a cup, and then they test it. And if you fail, you're going into a jail within a jail. So they take you from your bed area or whatever. They take all your stuff and they throw you in a cell in isolation for 30 days. And that did not happen to me because I was never tested. There just wasn't any belief in anyone around me who believed that I needed to be tested because I was acting in a funny way, acting strange, or doing things that were inappropriate or something like that. So learning not to drink, to get back to your question, learning not to drink was really part of the hard. That was a difficult thing because I have drank pretty much every day ever since I was about 16. And there was weeks where I didn't drink, but there was also many. I wish I had it written down that I did use alcohol. And getting off of that was the hardest thing. But I also lost weight. I started feeling better about myself. I believed in myself. And alcohol, heavy use, like I did, will knock you down, will tear you down. And that's what it did to me. And not using it and really not having an antidote either to not use alcohol, I became liberated from it, and it was a wonderful feeling, and a good feeling for pretty much everything. Once I wasn't using anything at all, I felt very good about my body and myself, and I didn't feel such deadly feelings that I had when I was using everything. I really didn't want, when I was using everything, when I was using all those drugs and drinking while I was out, I wanted to die. I'm not going to say that alcohol saved my, that getting off of alcohol and drugs saved my life, or going to prison saved my life. But I will say that it had some kind of effect on who I was and where I was going. So thank you for that excellent question.
So Brandon, we have some questions from the audience. This first one is from Linda. Did you see people with severe mental issues in prison?
Yes. I saw people who really needed help, and at every prison I went to, well, Wendy was first, but I didn't see one there, and the other in the other three prisons, I saw people who really needed help and weren't getting it. The psychological people who worked in that area, the counselors and the doctors, seemed just as weird as I am, and as I was, and I needed psychological counseling, heavy psychological counseling for many years. I first began taking lithium for my depression in 2015, and so that's like 15 years or 16, 20 years of self-medicating with alcohol and cocaine, because I didn't know what was wrong with me. So I did that to become happy. And there were people who I knew and I hung around with and I spoke with and I tried to support as well, who were very they were very damaged, and they were completely sick of going to counselors and counseling and having nothing to show for it. They had gone to doctors before. They went to the prison doctors, and they didn't get any kind of help, the help that they needed. What they got was a bunch of dittos or pieces of paper about meditation and how that's going to help solve your depression and all that. And it blew me away, because there's medication out there for depression, and to try to help people get off of this wheel of horrific and they weren't getting it. I had in Marcy Correctional, which was the last prison I was in, I can't remember her name, but I had a very, very good counselor there. And she listened, she was open, she was helpful, and she did a really good job. But without mentioning them, I saw men who were very deeply angry, very angry at the world, angry at everybody. And the COs every now and then had to kind of put them in their place, because they were so angry. They were angry at other people, and they would take it out on other people when that wasn't appropriate, of course. And it's kind of strange, because the one of the 5 people that you meet in prison, in my book, that you'll meet in prison, is they needed it. That guy needed help. The one CO, and it was 2 COs that I used. I kind of combined their characters, and then the other CO should have been a counselor. He should have been someone who was helping people out. But you know, when someone is having a mental attack, they are being brought down by their disease or by their nature in their mind. They're in the red. That's a dangerous, dangerous time, because corrections officers receive approximately 4 hours of medical training in psychology. So they're expected to memorize manic depression and the medication that goes with it, and this disorder, which has medicine that goes with that, and this one has medicine that goes with that, and I don't understand how New York State or any other state can give these guys, and there's good CEOs out there. There really are. But how are they going to deal successfully with a man who's freaking out and bouncing off the walls and I need help and I don't and just really losing it? They're going to come at him with force. They're going to come at him with nightsticks, and they're going to break him down, and he is going to wind up in a isolation cell with a few broken bones and no one giving him any help or any medicine for pain. And that's the way things are still dealt with in prisons today.
So this next question is from Miriam, and it says, tell us about those 5 people you met in prison.
Okay, well, now I get caught up on my own people sometimes, but and I don't know why. But the first one was Bear. His name was Big Bear, and he was Italian, and he was half Italian, half Indian, American Indian. And what an incredible, great guy. I was shaking when I was going into the second prison, Collins, where I met him. Because no, it was Elmira. I met him in Elmira Correctional, and I went in there, and there was talk on the bus that we rode in on, and their shackles and all that crap they made us wear. And because this is about me right now, I didn't have tattoos. I'm not a built guy, real big and built, with all the muscles and lifting weights and pumping iron and doing all that crap every day. I'm not like that. And I had glasses and I was fairly intelligent. So if you are an inmate or a person who's on his way to be an inmate, and you have all of the qualifications that I have that I just mentioned to you, and you don't have your paperwork that says, that's from the county and explains why you were arrested, that it was a felony and this and that, and mind you could, I didn't have it. My lawyer never told me to bring that. Well, it's pretty important to bring your paperwork to the prison when you're going through that system, because if you don't have it and you have the physical makeup that I have, they think you're a sex offender. So they thought, these other prisoners and they gossip. Prisoners gossip like crazy. It goes around and around and around. And so I met Bear at the lunch line when we were going through Elmira, and he was really cool. It was like he was meant to come meet me. It was a very strange situation because he just came to me and started saying, how you doing, and are you having any problems? And I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of am, man. Here's what's going on. And so Bear, like the first, he actually made me name the book, not made me personally, but gave me the idea to name the book, The 5 People You'll Meet in Prison, because when I met him, it was such a powerful experience. And he somehow was sent to save me in that particular point in time. Save me from being labeled a sex offender and given the beatings and problems that arise with that, because they do. Sex offenders are are the worst of prisoners, next to narcs. And the second one I met was in Collins, and he actually was a sex offender, but his crime was communicating with someone he thought was 14, but it was really a cop who was looking for people who were, talking sex with an underage person or whatever. So it wasn't like he went out and he molested somebody. If this was a phone conversation that he really screwed up, and his name was Pastor Mark, and Pastor Mark was he was going to be given 3 years in prison, and then 3 years or 5 years. It's not really 5 years. 5 years probation for his crime of talking to someone who was not a little girl. And he was very, very deeply, he told the story to me. Sex offenders will never tell you their story. So he was different because he came right up to me. He told me what he had done, and he told me that he asked the judge for the full sentence, which was like 9 years. He said to the judge, "I want to do my full time for this crime," and he got the sentence that he wanted, and he talked Jesus to me all the time. He really gave me some uplifting information that helped me, and this was the thing between all the 5 that helped me kind of get through the day. He gave me some freedom from the chaos that was my own mind. And let's see, there was also there was Gummy, and Gummy is he looked like a hockey player. One of the hockey players who is they call him a hockey goon, or a fighter, where they the coach will send the fighter out into the game when something goes wrong, and he's kind of like the Terminator. He'll go in there and punch the guy out who punched one of our guys, and it's always a big crowd pleaser kind of event. And that's what Gummy looked like. And Gummy was really part of the humor show. He was the funny one, really funny. He made funny faces. He didn't have any teeth. That's why he was called Gummy. And he always wanted me to write love poems to his girlfriend back home. And so I wrote a lot of poems for him. And he just turned out to be a good friend. He was just one of those guys who said, "This isn't," he said, "screw him. Forget about him. This isn't forever. We're gonna be getting out of here in less than a year. It's gonna be okay." And that, because these are moments where I'm manic. I'm having my mania, and I'm upset, and I don't know what to do. I don't want to go to the emergency area that they have there, and they have a doctor there and a girl, and because it's I'm getting prickly heat and really upset, and so Gummy helped a lot because he brought me kind of back to the world, back into the world. And so we've got 3, and 3 guys you'd think would be enough, but that wasn't enough. I picked, as I previously said, one of the 5 I met was a CO, which I renamed Valefor, and Valefor means friend of the devil. And he was very funny, again, very humorous guy. Didn't take didn't take the road of the tough guy CO, the guy who comes at you, the guy who is going to yell at you, the guy's going to put you in handcuffs and throw you in the van and run you down to wherever to get in a fight with one of the other COs or something like that. There was just lunacy going on at this place. And Valefor was fair, he was honest, he was generous, he would tell us what was going on with the other corrections officers, and he was the hero corrections officer to us because he was so nice. No one got in trouble when Valefor was there. Nobody. There was nobody bringing food in when they weren't supposed to have food. There was no one smoking in their dorm when they weren't supposed to do that. Any of the things any of the rules that could have been broken in. Pardon?
You mentioned in the book that it was a sort of a mutual respect thing. That
yes,
respectful towards the prisoners, and in kind they were respectful to him.
Yeah, and that's the thing that other dorms and other people and they just don't understand that if you're friendly to if it's a good guy, if you're friendly to your CO, then he's going to be friendly to you, or just respectful. You don't have to smile, you don't have to be joyful and all of that. You just have to give them respect, and they will give you. At least that was the case with Valefor. He was and let's see, who was the other one? Am I missing one?
You are, but I know Brenda has some additional
Gandhi.
questions.
Oh,
Gandhi? Was it Gandhi?
yes. My favorite. How could I forget my favorite guy?
Thank you, Brenda.
Gandhi. Thank you. Yeah, Gandhi is probably the best out of all the five. He was. He's somebody who. I love this because I believe that he actually believes it, that he can fly, that he can go to a grassy field and start running very, very fast and put his arms out and jump and actually fly. He believes he can fly. And that's just one that's just one nutty thing that he believed. I call him a highway drifter because I don't believe he has a home. I think he has an apartment maybe with his dad, and they are in the rural fringe area of New York State, wandering around. He steals cough medicine with dextromethorphan. He steals that from stores, and he's called a DMX junkie, and he takes this cough medicine from these stores, and then he'll if it's in the morning with you gotta have no food in your stomach. I can't believe I'm telling people this, but then you drink the cough medicine, and you're like, you start to feel like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'm happy, I'm happy, things are good, things are great. And boy, that cough medicine tasted terrible, but I'm grooving now. Things are all right, man. Yeah, okay. And it makes you hallucinate. The stuff makes you hallucinate. And he came into the dorm, and almost immediately he and I were sitting next to each other. We started talking about philosophy and philosophers, and Kierkegaard and all these others who Kant, and I could go on naming them forever, and all these others.
Can I add something here, Brandon? I'd like to tell you one thing I loved about the book was not only did you share stories about individuals and about specific situations, but you totally peppered the entire book with not only incredible literary connections, but also true facts about the prison system, about statistics in our country, and really eye-opening and very scary things to ponder. That's what made the books, for me, just such a great read, because the wonderful stories you told. I shouldn't say they're wonderful, they're pretty horrific, but wonderfully told stories. And then all of these, you're I met two people today who said you're incredibly smart. They both knew you from your days in Lockport. One was a fellow classmate, Bill mentioned, said he was in your class.
Oh yeah.
And Rosanna Sandell did get a message to me saying she remembers you well and that you were such one of her smarter students she ever had. And it really comes through in the book, how you're able to pull from all of these different sources and really make it such an exquisite read. So thank you for that.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I had a difficult time with when I started writing the book. I realized that I needed to, with the other books, I needed to write about what was going on with me in the prison and why I went there and who I was meeting while I was in there and what was going on. And that became a natural flow to get through the book. But I knew also that I had to do my research. So I read on and off, like about 100 books to use as reference in this one. I read some other books too, in addition to that. But the statistics, what's happening with the criminal justice system, how much it costs us, all of these things, this all ties in directly to my experience. Where is all this money going? How are they spending it? Where are they getting this money from to be able to do this? And throughout the system, all the way down to the cop on the beat, on the street, there's always something fishy going on. Always. There's always money being spent that's like, are they serious about that? How could that be happening? How could that be true? And it's very rich for investigation. And the funny thing about it is they do whatever they can to keep it all quiet. They don't want anyone to talk.
Brandon, I'm hoping that your book will assist our society to start overhauling the prison system, because there certainly needs to be a lot more of the person-centered approaches that Valefor was using. They need to spend time with the CEOs and the warden all the way down to change this system, because what you went through was just horrific. But you came out of it. You came out of it and you went into a recovery mode.
Yeah, I believe that this may be, and I hate to say it, but this may be one of those systems that ever since it was created, and I remember there was a CO who was really popular at the time when jails were really getting up and rolling and we were building a lot of them. He instituted corporal punishment. And that's like, they beat the crap out of you every day and they get away with it. And he was praised for what he did. And it just shows how the system was screwed up. And it is unforgivably screwed up now. But living in Florida for 2 years, I was able to see the politics of a red state. Florida is a red state, and I'm a objective person. I believe this side, and I believe this side. I disbelieve this side, and I disbelieve this side. It's all kind of balances out. And but my parents are they're GOP supporters of everything, and it made me sick of how those prisons were managed in Florida, because I joined Florida Cares, which is a reform-based group trying to help out people who are in prison in Florida. They have no air conditioning in Florida in prison. None. Could you imagine that?
No.
It's 100 degrees for 2 weeks in a row, and you're trying to sleep with you got a wet rag on your head, and you just got out of the shower, and other people are trying to get in there. Meanwhile, you got COVID-19 floating around. It's gotta be hell. It's gotta be absolute hell. And I just don't understand how these guys who are the senators and legislators and this and that for the state can get in their cars, their air-conditioned cars, and drive home every day.
Brandon, can you vote in that? Can you vote with your record?
They were putting it to a vote itself, where if you paid, it was like if you paid all of your money, because as soon as you get out of prison, you owe money to the state. Could be a couple $1,000s that you need to pay off, so you need to get to work. Well, I don't know how you're expected to get to work when you have no pants for work. You don't have working pants. You can't do an interview with anybody, and it's all ridiculous. But they will never change in Florida. It's a good old boy network. It's a lot of it is based on straightforward, right in your face racism. And the system is that's the way they want it. That's the way they want to run it. And they're endorsed by the president, who now lives there.
Earlier this evening, you said there was no joy in prison, and it reminded me of a line in your book where you talked about the fact that even though you have a release date, you can't be joyful in that date because at any given second, something could happen to change that. So that was particularly sad for me to read that you can't even look forward to anything. You have to really stay firm and present in the moment. I thought maybe you could talk about that a little bit more. And
well,
before it's over, we do want you to read from your book.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to be honest with this book, and I also wanted to say that we are supposed to be a free society, America. And what I saw was not. It was a way for people who are poor to stay poor, and I don't know what is good after you get out of prison. Well, I'm out now, and I'm on parole. I'm not supposed to drink or use I'm not supposed to drink or use drugs. I'm going over to this halfway house, or I'm going to live there, and you're surrounded by strangers. The whole system is based on abstinence and strangers telling you what to do. And I don't believe in it. I don't believe in the system. I don't believe in the government being the man as he used to be the man in the 1960s. I was raised by hippies, and I believe in some of the beliefs that were held during that time. And I don't believe that a judge in America should be able to tell me what I am to do with my private time. And what I mean by that is I don't think a judge can order you, they can order you not to steal from the store anymore, but they can't order you not to use marijuana anymore. That's your choice. It's your body. The judge cannot make that kind of a decision. We let them do it, but it's not in any way ethically right. And
well, I think we're moving into a slightly different world. So let's try and stay with the prison system if we can, and your incredible book. Brenda, did you have any additional questions?
I had one for the audience. How much did you know about the prison system before you heard Brandon speak? And did this change your perspective?
Good question.
And for those answering, you can use the chat section so everyone can see your answers.
So Brandon, could you read a little bit for us?
Yes. Gandhi, my favorite character, definitely my favorite character. I talked to him today, and he's up by Corning, New York. I believe it's called Corning.
Mm-hmm.
And he is living in a tent, and he goes to the drugstore up the street and gets his cough medicine in the morning, and then he hangs around the area where he is in the tent, and he goes over to the local church and hangs out there and talks to people, and then he hangs out at home at his tent. So he's still doing the same thing. I would assume everyone is still doing what they used to do. Big Bear, I told you he was a meth user and a cocaine user, and he stole things to support his habit. He just got out and did the same thing. Started doing the same thing. This is a scene near the end of the book when we're at the little library area that we have in Marcy Correctional. And Gandhi and I are there, and we're complaining about how the librarian for Marcy Correctional never really brings us good books. He always brings us just a pile of garbage and books that belong in the garbage. So here's the bit I wanted to read. Gandhi and I were at the sad little bookshelves in the TV room looking at the latest collection. Every 3 months, Marcy's librarian or assistant librarian visited each dorm to take the old battered books and replace them with new battered books. This time there was more Danielle Steele, Lee Child, and Patricia Cornwell. There was more Spanish Bibles, a Jack London story collection, a couple of Eastern philosophy paperbacks, and a bunch of authors I'd not heard of before. I grabbed a hip-looking noir by Andrew Vox called Sheila. Gandhi made a hotel sound. Gandhi made a hushed sound and held up a college textbook, Psychology. Having found the Dead Sea Scrolls of prison, he opened it, and we looked. One page had a large multicolored pyramid labeled Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. I remembered it from some college course. The bottom floor of Maslow's pyramid was man's need for physiological well-being, satisfying hunger, thirst, sleep, and sex. The next floor up was safety, including stability, protection, and strength. The middle floor was acceptance, love, and belonging. Second from the top was esteem, the need for prestige and reputation. At the top of Maslow's hierarchy was self-actualization or self-fulfillment. Does Nystap or Marcy help us with Maslow? Said Gandhi. Let's test it, I said. How about physiological? My need for food, drink, and sleep are at best accidentally covered. but I still need sex. Oops. T level only 200. No need for loving. So that is the T level, so you know, is testosterone. My testosterone level was at 200, so there was no need for loving. That was because of drugs and then the amount of time that I spent in prison. Get away from me, said Gandhi. How about safety? Do you feel safe here in Nystad? I feel safe from inmates and war, but I do not feel safe when it comes to my own mind or corrections officers. Me neither. COs are angry and scared. Two of us. Fear is the most dangerous threat to safety. Acceptance? I don't feel love except when I look at that Buttman magazine. Belonging? I don't belong here. No, you do. Okay, esteem. I'll tell you. Sorry. Acceptance? I don't feel love except when I look at Buttman magazine. Belonging? I don't belong here. No, you do. Okay, esteem? I will tell you now that mine is in the toilet. Mine too, brother. Mine too. You have a reputation, you have a reputation for not bathing, only among those of the Latino persuasion. Now we have made it to the top of the pyramid. Self-fulfillment, self-actualization. That's what NICEP is for. They should tell us, the counselors, that we're working toward self-fulfillment. No, that's the guys who take a towel, Vaseline, and a Buttman magazine to the restroom. Then what's self-actualization? Do I have to believe in God or a higher power or thumb up the AA book? Look it up.
Quite a lot in that.
Buttman magazine, I stopped there. I stopped near there because I wanted to tell you that that is a real magazine, and it is a magazine full of photographs of some white, but mainly African American women who have gigantic rear ends. For some reason, that is a popular choice for the restroom among some of the brethren in the jail.
Well, when I learned there was a magazine called Cat Fancy, I knew that there was something for everyone in this world. So I don't question it at all. I believe you.
Well, this is almost done. So now, what's self-actualization? Do I have to believe in God or a higher power or thump the AA book? Let's look it up, Gandhi said, flipping pages, expressing one's creativity, a quest for spiritual enlightenment, pursuit of knowledge, and the desire to give to society. Deep, brother, I said. I'd rather express my creativity, encouraging others to give to me. That's quite Zen, Gandhi said. The student becomes the master, and here's the one hand clapping. That's the end of that section.
Thank you, Brandon. Brenda, any further questions?
I don't have any further questions, but
Michaela?
I did see some responses from the audience.
Okay, could you read those for us?
Yeah, the first one is Brandon reinforces what I have previously learned about the horrible prison system. And then there's some more. I had a research project in a prison in the 1970s after the Attica uprising, and the same problems have not been resolved. Okay, that's pretty much the two responses I had. I don't know if anybody else saw any other responses.
I do have one question to wrap up from the Q&As. This one's from Linda. How do you see a way to prison reform?
Well, President Trump and Nancy Pelosi were actually talking to one another at the beginning of Trump's presidency. And it seemed like both, it was they call it nonpartisan. It seemed like both parties were getting together to work on federal prison reform. And it was even called the first step, the legislation that they had done that they were putting through. It was called the first step. And it's so weird that I haven't seen an article on it or anything. So I guess I'll have to write the article. They haven't done anything since. So you got the first step and then you got nothing. And they could easily blame COVID-19, which they probably will. But yeah, I would like to know what is the second step? What's happening right now with reforming the prisons? And it's so much money. So when I say, some listeners would go, when I say we're spending $180 trillion on, or $180 billion on the justice system, which is everything. You know, it's your DA, your district attorneys, your everybody who's involved in the system. And what they're going to do is they would say, if I said this, well, where is it? What's happening? What they'll do is they'll go in to the budget, and they'll say, well, we don't need as many. What's the opposite of the district attorney? Real quick, the other one, the defender. We don't need as many public defenders. We don't need to spend as much money on toilet paper for the inmates because they just shouldn't go to the bathroom so much. They're probably wasting it, blowing their noses and stuff like that. So let's just give them one roll of toilet paper every 3 months. And that's what they'll do. They'll cut the good things and leave all the bad stuff, the expensive stuff, and we get absolutely nowhere. So prison reform is actually kind of a scary term because they'll say we saved all this money when what they've done really in reality is taken away the little tiny bit of quality of life that the prisoners do have right now.
That's a very sad answer. And judging from your description of the food in prison, they can ill afford to cut back on any kind of money for the food.
No. And well, we didn't talk about disabilities very much. I told you a little bit about mental, but when I saw at Marcy wheelchair guys who were prisoners and they were in a wheelchair and they had whatever was wrong with their legs and stuff, they got cheated terribly, especially during the winter when it's snowing and it's this deep and the truck has already gone through and paved, but then plowed, but then there's another truck that came through that threw the stuff that was plowed onto the thing and then over back onto the sidewalk, and they don't do anything about it. The COs just stand there and stare while this guy who's in a wheelchair has to get two different guys to come help him and try to push him through the snow. It's all these little things that make a real big thing. It's all these little things that turn into the monster that is what prison is.
Well, any closing thoughts, Brandon?
I think the thing that is not stated in the book, or maybe it is, and I'm not thinking about it right. Maybe it is in there. But the point of the book is that we met in prison, the five of us, and we went through something really, really horrible. And it's still going on today. There's still plenty of guys out there who are in there right now. And what the point of the book is that we all met in prison, and we brought each other to higher mental levels, to where we were floating among this insanity, but we maintained our minds. And when we were talking to each other, we brought our best philosophies into those discussions. And we talked about getting out and how we were going to do it. We weren't talking about pit bulls, rims, hose, and money, and getting crack and all of this other. We weren't talking about any of that bullshit. There were plenty of people in there talking about Buttman and all this bullshit. What we were talking about was philosophers, spirituality, and being smart, using your smarts, getting out on a good way, and moving down the right road. And even though some have made mistakes after they left my presence and after they left the prisons, the point is through our thinking and our philosophies and our friendship, we had the key all along.
Thank you. Thank you, Brandon. And I encourage everyone to pick the book up and read it. It's an important book, especially at this juncture we are culturally in America, when we are beginning to shift our perspective in the way we see the world. I think it's a really important book to read. So thank you so much. And before everybody goes, I want to invite you to come back next month. I'm holding the book up right here. It's called A Time to Wander by Cher Thompson and N.F. Johnson. And that date of that book club is September 3rd, and I hope to see you then. So thank you, everybody.
Brandon, thank you for enlightening us.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Good.
Thank you, Brenda. And Michaela, thank you for your help tonight.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. You did a great job.
Mary.
Bye-bye.
Take
Bye.
care.